Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
Welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. For our radio audience tuning in at WYED 94.1 FM and WYEDonline.com, we're glad that you all can be with us. Also joining us online worldwide via our podcast at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music. We're glad you all could be with us as well. Well, I don't have to tell you guys, especially on the radio side, that the new school year is here. My nephew, that's a senior this year, is pleasantly surprised and excited about this school year, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are. We have a very special guest that's joining us today, though, to talk not only about the school year, but also his objectives for the school year as well. We're excited to welcome Dr. Lance Evans to our broadcast. Dr. Evans is the State Superintendent of Education here in Mississippi. We're going to talk to him not only about that role, but also what he's excited about when it comes to the school year and, of course, his objectives as well. Dr. Evans, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking.
This is definitely a pleasure of mine. I am, someone who was born and raised in Mississippi, benefited from schools in Mississippi, and I know that a lot of people are excited about the changes they're seeing in Mississippi when it comes to horse support as well. Talk to us about, for yourself, Dr. Evans, what are you excited about when it comes to this new school year?
Oh, first and foremost, I'm excited to have the opportunity to work with our schools statewide. Just like you, I am a native of Mississippi for my entire life, and was born and raised in the northern part of the state, but lucky enough to have relationships across all of Mississippi with our superintendents and administrators and teachers. And I am excited, like I said, just to have that opportunity to serve and also push forward the current success that we've been having in Mississippi, but also building on that success to move the state forward and creating, just creating those opportunities for students across all of Mississippi, because we have different things that happen in isolation that are great things that are happening, but the issue with that is we need to be able to leverage that through a systems-based approach to provide those opportunities for all students in Mississippi.
That's such a great point. I'm going to ask you later about what we as a community can do to support the efforts, Dr. Evans. But I want to talk about, for yourself, for those who may just be being introduced to you, when did your own love of education, when did that begin that made you want to have your own education career?
Well, to be honest with you, I can still remember my kindergarten teacher. Her name was Miss Judy Farah, and she was a wonderful lady. Some of the fondest memories of education began with her, because she was just such a wonderful lady and cared so much about me. And I'll tell you, I come from, in my family, there are a couple of educators that are in there. The most notable one is my grandfather. He had somewhere right around 40 years. I think it was around 39 years in public education over the course of his career as a teacher, coach, principal, superintendent. So I'll tell you, he, as I was growing up, helped build in me that love for education. But it wasn't when I was in high school that I thought I would ever be an educator. I probably was not too different from a lot of people, and actually ran from the thing that I really ended up needing to do, because I thought that, because being with him, it's because my mother, she's in the healthcare field, and being with him, I always thought, well, that's probably not what because you know how it is as a kid. You think you want to do your own thing. And it wasn't until, my freshman year of college, probably the beginning of the second semester, that I really made a decision that was exactly what I wanted to do. And it was teachers, but it was also coaches that had a huge impact on me. And also, I'll call this person's name Mr. Jimmy Weeks. He was actually my ag teacher, and we had a very large, robust FFA program in the high school. I was lucky enough to start in one school and finish my entire life. So very lucky to do that. And he had an impact on me, and it just through that, I guess that process of growing up, I realized, hey, this is what I'm called to do, and just took off and never looked back.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, having that influence even in your family, Dr. Evans, and then, of course, you're being able to go throughout that same path of serving in those different capacities as teacher and coach, principal, district superintendent. Now, as I mentioned, you're the State Superintendent of Education. So for our audience that may not know, talk to us about that role and exactly what that entails.
So first and foremost, people are confused sometimes about the job. They think that the State Superintendent is the boss, for lack of a better word, of all superintendents in Mississippi, and that is not the case. Our school districts have local control. They each have boards. Excuse me. They each have boards that govern them, and the primary role of the State Superintendent is really support. It all bases from that mindset, and this agency exists to support the school districts in Mississippi. Without them, there would be no reason to have a state superintendent position or Mississippi Department of Education. So, and that is very in tune with my beliefs, my core values. I am a servant. That is how the best way for me to describe my belief and how my leadership style is. And other pieces that are associated with this role. All right, there is a lot of work from the political side because I do understand the importance of that relationship between our elected officials, Mississippi members of the Mississippi legislature. There is a direct correlation between their support and our success, and also a direct link between the relationship between our school districts and the MDE, because what we do is we create systems and that support each of the different areas of Mississippi. And the thing is while lots of times we have to create a more of a standardized type process in which districts have the opportunity to benefit from, my goal is also to create in those processes to build in a system to where they can be nimble, if you will, to where they can be adapted to the individual areas. And I have a quote, goodness, I've said it so many times, and I've got a big picture of it in my office. It says, "You can't understand the world, you can understand a place like Mississippi." It's a William Faulkner quote. And that is a fact, because Mississippi is distinctly different, from north to south to east to west. And while we have similar successes, we have different struggles. And it's important that we understand that as a whole, our goal is to produce a product in the public schools, and it is an active, productive member of society that contributes back to not only the nation or the state, but the community in which helped develop them. And that is very, very important to me. Being from a small town and understanding the importance of that, and understanding that Mississippi is made up of those small towns, is very, very, it's very vital that you understand that, and that drives you. But there's several other pieces we could, if we were to go into a detailed job description, we would be here for quite some time. But so overall, that philosophy is that servant leadership. The servant philosophy is what is essential to being, in my opinion, successful here in this position.
I appreciate that. I noticed one of the goals that you have, Dr. Evans, that is near and dear to myself. We've addressed it here on this broadcast by having individuals talk about it, and that is you want to be able to address the teacher shortage. Of course, you mentioned the teachers that have benefited you. I've had great teachers for myself, and it's great that everyone can be able to have that opportunity. Talk to us about why that's a priority for you when you're looking at this school year.
I met with Dr. Courtney Van Cleve the other day, who heads up those efforts primarily from the department. And two of the areas that we discussed at length, one was, being Mississippi, the fact that it is such a relationship state, is us designing a system so that we can coordinate our efforts in our educational providers, in our universities, to get access to our students that may be entering their junior year of college, which means they typically are rolling into that situation where they're very heavily based in their teacher ed program. For the department to almost think of it as not an employment agency, but a first line of defense as far as holding those students with us. And then the department then bringing in the different school districts to be able to almost create a pipeline, because my goal would be for those students before they leave the teacher ed programs they're in to already be employed. That's my goal. And what that does is that potentially warrants off them leaving to go to another state. They immediately see the value in the public education system of Mississippi, and just kind of you get your claws, if you will, for lack of a better word, in them to keep them here. Because the thing is if we don't take that aggressive approach, they're liable to go somewhere else. They'll end up in Atlanta or somewhere in Texas, or because when you look at these job fairs or recruiting fairs, as a superintendent, I've gone to several in my years, and there are some recruiters there from other states that they are literally offering contracts to teachers sitting at the job fair. So my goal is to not let them ever get to that point, if that makes sense. Now, there are some students who are just going to go because they want to go, and it's in their mind, and that's just, I'm all for them. I want them to be happy. But my goal is to limit that access to those people, those outside entities, because I'm an American. I love the United States, but I'm a Mississippian, and I'm worried about keeping our Mississippi teachers here. That's who I'm concerned about. And another piece is looking at our tenured teachers. So thank goodness we had a bill that was passed this past year that allowed our retired teachers to come back, and it allows he or she to spend a period of 5 years. But now there are several qualifications, if you will, and it's not necessarily qualifications from a teacher ed qualification. Now, obviously, they have to meet the same requirements from a certification standpoint as they did when they were in the classroom. That there are boxes that they have to check, if you will, to be able to qualify for that opportunity. I would like for us during this legislative session to decrease some of those barriers. I think that moving in that direction was a great first step, but I think it was a first step so that we can, any teacher anywhere in Mississippi, that he or she has completed the time in which they are that's required of them, because, we have legacy employees and horizon employees, and that's basically a 4 versus an 8-year tenure track, if you will, we don't have tenure, but a 4 to 8 year track in the retirement system to be, let's use the word tenure, to be tenured in the retirement system, that they have the opportunity to come back. So whether they've eclipsed their 25 or they've eclipsed their 30, that way they have that opportunity to come back and contribute. And what that looks like is that they draw their retirement, and then while they're employed, and this is no different than what's currently the law that was passed, they pay into the retirement system just as they were, but then they also are paid to be an employee, a teacher in the school district, because when they leave, all of that knowledge base, all of the just think about over the course of 25 or 30 years, the amount of financial resources that we have poured into teachers to get them to where they are in their career. And then when they retire and we don't give them an avenue to come back, we're just giving it all away. And when you think of it from a purely economic standpoint, that makes absolutely no sense. And then we have to start over, if you will. So those are two primary ways to attack that issue, other than the obvious, which I like to think it's obvious, is ensuring that our teachers have a high degree of quality of life in the workplace. That is, our administrators have to understand this, because in the end, that administrator is not going to be successful if that teacher doesn't want them to be, and that teacher is not going to be successful if that student doesn't want them to be. So, and in that district, the superintendent, of course, it follows that progression, but I always say the district will only be as good as the community demands it to be. So, but my goal is to make sure that our people hold themselves to an even higher standard than that. That's how I have always operated personally. So it has benefited me, but I've also had the opportunity to work with wonderful people, because another thing I always say is it doesn't matter what you know if you can't convince people to follow you. So that's a long answer to that short question, so I apologize for that.
No. The passion you have for it, Dr. Evans, definitely comes through, and I think that goes to the point of the last thing I wanted to mention for our audience, and that's why it's so important for us. I don't have children of my own, but to be able to support those that are in the school system, to do what we can to be able to support our local schools and educators, and, of course, to be able to do our part for the students as well to make this a productive year for them. Dr. Lance Evans, I really appreciate you spending some time with us. As I mentioned, Dr. Evans is the State Superintendent of Education, talking with us not only about his own journey that's led him to where he is now, but also the impact he wants to continue to make when it comes to the Mississippi Department of Education. And Dr. Evans, it goes without saying, you're welcome back here anytime. Looking forward to speaking with you again.
I want to throw one more quick thing out there if you'll allow
sure,
me to
definitely.
do that.
Yeah.
So something that's vital that we have to have our communities help us with is making sure we get students to school, because the bottom line is if they're not there, we can't educate them. And we have an issue nationwide that revolves around chronic absenteeism. And the definition of chronic absenteeism is any student who is absent for any reason whatsoever at all. Literally, that student could be attending a funeral for a family member. And if they're out 2 days in a month, because it's measured by month, if they're out 2 days, let's say that was in January. If they're out 2 days in January, they're considered chronically absent for January in their school. So it is making sure that we, and all too often, I don't think people understand the importance and the significance that goes along with that on the back end. Because, the thing is if you were considered chronically absent for the course of a period of the year, you basically have missed 10% of the school year, which that's a lot. Because we have a finite amount of time to get our students where we need them to be. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, again, something that we can all be able to work on. Dr. Evans, again, thank you for that. And thank you again for the great work you've been able to do in your education career. And as I mentioned, you have an open invitation here. Looking forward to speaking with you again.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
To you as well, and we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Now let's go make today amazing. Take care.